Okay, we all have a tricky relationship with resentment, don't we? It usually stems from giving too much and also having maybe unfair expectations. So today's episode is a case study in one of my brilliant catalysts during her mentoring session. Of course, I hide all details to protect her privacy, but it's a common theme. This is so common with all of us, especially women in medicine. We have these unspoken expectations of us from society that we are more nurturing, more harmonious, we are more giving. And as a result, we tend to take on other people's burdens, specifically our patients, our clients, and we end up overgiving, overworking, trying to pull them through change, trying to inspire them, find another doorway to their insight. And we're doing the work for them. So listen to this episode, and I'm sure you will get some gems from this other colleague's journey into unpacking her resentment. Welcome to The Catalyst Way, the podcast for women clinicians ready to clear the chaos and create space to flourish. I'm Dr. Lara Salyer, a former burned out family practice doctor turned mentor, author, and professional calendar whisperer. I help women in medicine reclaim time, trust their intuition, and build practices that actually fit their lives. Each week, you'll get practical tools, creative strategies, and tiny shifts that help you color outside the lines and paint a work-life masterpiece of authentic, aligned joy. Welcome. This episode, we're going to talk about resentment. It's like a warning light on the dashboard in the path to burnout, because if we don't address core feelings of resentment, absolutely, you will end up in burnout land. I can tell you because I've been there. And not only just with career, but can happen with relationships, with friendships, with community projects. Resentment is the unspoken expectations that can exist in the air between two people or a group of people or an employer and employee. It can happen everywhere. So this episode will really help you sort of highlight where you might be holding resentment and give you tools to unpack it. As expected, this is a pretty free flow podcast now, right? We're in the new era, the relaunched era. So I'm in my home office. I'll be sipping on some water. I'll be hitting pause when I need to gather my thoughts because there's a lot to unpack here and it's really worthwhile to stick around. At the end, I'm going to give you something to take away with. So let's start with just the opening. This catalyst was noticing after many years in practice in an integrated functional medicine private practice, she felt like she was giving too much. In fact, her quote was, all I want to do is work. I love working. I love helping my patients, but I feel like I'm giving too much and I'm starting to get more and more resentful. So we paused and I asked, what is the evidence that you see that you're giving too much, right? Because we always want to question ourselves. Myself included. I want to also make sure I'm clear. This is the style of mentoring that I like to do is questions, right? And just to make sure that we are identifying the problem correctly so we can then find the root. And she admitted to spending hours on patient visit summaries and then also preparing before they came to the office. She would say yes when people asked to pick her brain and give opinions on their medical case, even before they were inside her services, right? So we saw all these different pieces of evidence that she was giving a lot of her time, of her expertise. And of course, we could validate you would feel resentful. This is a lot of unpaid time, or people are paying her time, but she's really working a lot. So there are two things at play. There's two sides to resentment. There is the patient asking a lot of you and then you're delivering. But then there's also the patient not asking anything of you and then you over deliver. And both of those are the equation of resentment. Either way, there's two sides to that. So we talked about why she felt that she needed to keep working to this high degree, right? And I've done it. You've done it. You think you're done with the visit summary and you think, oh, wait, there's that other article I could put in there, or maybe that video or that one book I loved and I could put that. And you start to just spend hours spinning your wheels in mud to make this like virtuous visit summary that let's be honest, most patients probably won't read the whole thing. And so those are easy ways to say, oh, I could shave off time there. But she is a typical catalyst, which means she thinks deeply. She's open to this self-inquiry. And she admitted, I think it comes from a need to feel liked. I want to know that others in my community see I'm really trying hard to make everybody healthy. I'm really trying hard to educate and to change healthcare. Of course, that's noble and that's awesome. But that also is out of our control. We can't force others to like us, even if we work harder and harder. And she knows this, right? This is the dual part of, yes, our left logical brain knows this, but can we tap into a wiser, intuitive self that can steer us in a slightly different direction? And so she was commenting on all the different ways that she would work more, right? She felt like she wanted to also be fair. There was this underlying guilt and shame for charging a lot for her services. So what she was finding is when people did pay for her hourly time, she felt guilty. That's a lot of money. She felt like she had to keep delivering long after the exam was over. So if they asked a question in the portal, she had to answer it. If they decided that they needed more information after their visit was over because they were unclear, she would spend time creating more resources and guides. And then also, she felt guilty if they couldn't afford her services. So the discovery calls felt disingenuous. She felt kind of sheepish, right? When you have to sell, especially if you don't like selling, you tend to back away from it because it's not comfortable. So she really wouldn't confidently explain how her services could help. It was an aftermath of, I'll show you the prices after we're done with our call. And, we're energetic beings. Patients can know when you're not comfortable. So it's almost better to admit it and just say, I'm not a salesperson. That's what I do. I'm not a salesperson. So, we can talk about prices or you can see it on my website. It's all transparent. And for her, she was transparent, but people would get on the phone call ready to almost attack, saying, this is so expensive, especially when you're in an American healthcare system where people have insurance copays or, things are covered. And then now you're asking them to pay out of pocket. It feels audacious and bold, and it takes some time to get comfortable with the why of this. So there she was, kind of shouldering all these little expectations that patients had of her. Why are you charging so much? And if I can't afford you, what are you going to do for me? So this is how we solved her problem. We started to look at how she could discreetly and diplomatically exit from conversations in her small town. When people wanted to pick her brain, she's standing at a little festival outside listening to music and they're asking, hey, I wondered about gluten. Is that really even a thing? Right? You can engage with your fellow neighbors, right? If it's a lighthearted question like that, that's pretty open-ended, giving your opinion on gluten. But if they change it to, I have Crohn's, I have ulcerative colitis, is gluten really an issue for me? Then that's a little different. That feels a little more personal. So here are some scripts that I gave her that you might like. You can try these on. One of them is I like to kind of be cutesy about it with my patients or prospective patients, the public, right? I'll say, oh, are you asking this as like a friend or do you want me to put my professional doctor hat on? That gives them clear delineation that these are skills of mine that I've trained for and I've paid money to get training and certification. I continue to increase my CMEs and continue to keep up to date. This isn't just reading the headlines. This is giving professional advice. And then I also say, well, if it's a professional hat, then I'd love to speak with you on a strategy session. Go to my website and book one. It'd be great. You donate $5 to our local United Way if you book a strategy session, right? So that's how I politely get out of those public facing questions. Another way you could say is, are you asking me as a friend or as a healer? That's another way of sidestepping. If somebody's going through a hard time, they have unfortunate diagnoses. It's very hard. And you can say that, wow, that sounds really hard. I'm holding you in my heart, but my calendar isn't available for free advice, right? You can say that. Therapists are great at doing that. They get questions all the time. And as physicians and nurse practitioners and PAs, we aren't trained in how to hold these professional boundaries as much because, it's just medical advice. It's just opinion. In functional and integrative medicine, it's even trickier. So getting used to saying, I understand this is a rough time for you. But it seems like there's miscommunication on my website. If you think I can talk with you openly about this, I do charge. This is medical advice, and I would recommend that we establish a professional relationship so I can best support you. Okay. So this is some of the ways that we were noticing in her situation. She was feeling like overgiving. It was the public facing way. And now let's talk about inside her business. She was noticing that people, when they did pay, were just sucking out the energy from her life. She had portal messages. She had all sorts of things that she had to do to feel like she was satisfying them on this monetary level. Quick intermission. When I was suffering burnout, I didn't need another protocol. I needed permission to be myself, which is why I wrote my book, Right Brain Rescue. It's a funny, raw, and honest take on the physician burnout epidemic, and also how creativity helped me come back to life. This is also why I love making infographics and self-paced courses, because I want to save you time and spark your creativity and help you see that healing happens when we're fully ourselves. So head to drlarasalyer.com/shop and browse the products. You might find something that can save you time, spark your creativity, and help you make your career the joy that it should be. Interestingly, she has a membership. That's usually how we solve for problems like this. So if you're a longtime listener, you know that I recommend memberships because it really helps you feel ethical, supportive, and resourced, not just for your patients, but for you. And you can have any number of tiers. I have a 3-tier membership. The highest tier is the highest paid. They get the most of my one-on-one time. The lowest tier is the most affordable, but they don't get my one-on-one time. They get group or they get pre-filmed education. It's some way that they can at least get educated and dip their toes in the water, right? So she has a membership. You'd think, well, wait, why is she having this problem? The reason is after her initial meet and greet visit, she had a hard time really recommending the membership. She was noticing she was feeling hesitant because she didn't have the systems in place yet for these boundaries, right? She didn't give a deadline saying, this is our meet and greet visit. And in 30 days, the invitation to join one of the tiers of our membership is going to expire. She didn't make it very clear. It's like when we don't speak out the communication that we want people to know, when we don't outline and be very clear about our expectations, as Elizabeth Gilbert would say, what happens in vagueness stays in vagueness. So people weren't signing up for her membership. And they would circle back months later asking, well, I have a question after that first visit. What do I do now? And so when we put clarity in action in our systems, and you don't have to do this, you can have a staff circle back. You can tell patients, hey, this was a great foundational visit. I have a better idea of your case and your plan. Here are some next steps. My invitation is open for 30 days to join A, B, or C level of our membership. You qualify best for level B because of what we've identified on your visit. And after 30 days, my assistant will call back and remind you one time that this is expiring. And then you won't hear from me. But if you do want to become a member after that, you'll have to repeat the whole process of a brand new initial visit because our bodies are dynamic, right? Our bodies are like a river. They can change. So I try to explain to patients, this is really just trying to match your current situation with my services. If you come back a year later saying, I met you a year ago, but now I have different diagnoses, I just want to start right where we left off, that's not possible. We have to examine everything with a fresh lens again. So those two things really helped her. And then she started noticing, this is probably why I'm having a money mindset, kind of a stall. And I'm finding that if I can unpack that better and provide more clear guidance on who qualifies for the lowest tier, middle, and high tier, and I'm more front loading on inviting them to membership after that first visit, I won't feel as resentful. I'll feel like I've held up my end of the deal, which is explaining how my services work and providing the level of care that they signed up for. But see, here's the third tricky thing is our internal boundaries. You might be great at the public facing boundaries. You might be great at saying, sorry, I can't give you medical advice. You're not my patient. If you're standing in line getting cheese curds, right? You might be great at saying, this is just how our services are. You need to join one of the tiers of membership and we will help you, right? But now what about the internal boundaries? Where do you abandon yourself? The patient's not done anything other than send you a portal message at 8 p.m. at night because they happen to be off work and they had another question. Can you sit with that discomfort of letting that portal message stay there until the next working day? In this hyper-connected 24/7 world, many of us struggle with internal boundaries more than we do with the external boundaries. And that's what builds up resentment. And nobody's doing it but us. The call is coming from inside the house, right? So we also spent part of this session looking at all the ways that she abandoned herself by stepping over her own internal boundaries, right? Like looking at her charting at 8 at night and seeing messages and then answering them, which only rewards the patients that you're there, you're available, you're a good security blanket. And looking at ways that she could fortify those boundaries and practice sitting in that discomfort of not being liked. That is the root cause of all boundary stepping is, can you be okay with disappointing others because you believe in a common good that helps you stay vibrant and not burned out? Can you be okay sitting in the policies that you create with your staff, saying we uphold work-life balance, we uphold longevity, vitality, and self-inquiry. And here's how we provide ways that you can contact us that fit with our work life. For example, we have a weekly shared group medical visit, or we have a policy that you can send us 2 messages a month in the portal, or you can expect a reply in 3 days. Of course, this is for most consulting practices. If you're running a direct primary care practice, which many of our mentees do, that might be different. You might say, expect a reply from one of our staff in 4 to 6 hours or the next business day. If it's an emergency, go to the local ER, whatever. But policies are there to keep you passionate. I'll say that again. Policies are there to keep you passionate. And when you start burning out, not only does it affect you and your family, it affects your patients. You feel it inside in this inner resentful fire that just keeps kindling and burning, and it doesn't feel good. So imagine a future where you really look at those ways that you've negated your own internal boundaries. Look for flow inside where you've overstepped your own boundaries and practice sitting in discomfort. Here's one way you can practice sitting in discomfort. Meditating. It can be very uncomfortable. I love meditating now. I didn't always. It's very uncomfortable to sit there and watch your thoughts come and go and hear yourself talk and plan and worry and fear and just have to sit in there. Also, if you come up with a really good idea, like a really good idea that you want to write on your phone, but you can't because you're meditating and you're supposed to trust that it will still be there when you're done. And that's a great practice in sitting in discomfort, which we all need to train up in this era of scrolling and 90-second teaser videos. So if you have one invitation today, find a way to sit with discomfort. If you're waiting in line at a grocery store and you want to pull out your phone, resist that. If you wake up in the morning and you're trying to pour your coffee and you can't wait for that first sip, resist that. Look for ways to practice that little bit of discomfort and know that that is important to avoid building resentment. So as always, we want to do a little bit of a catalyst question that helps you investigate a little deeper into your own path. So here it is. Are you ready? Where in your work or life do you feel quietly resentful? Not the loud resentments, right? The quiet ones are the more dangerous. What boundary is trying to emerge from that quiet resentment? Where do you feel like you want to take up space, right? So remember, you can build this work life that shifts with you, allowing higher access one-on-one time to people with more capital. That's okay. You're allowed to pay bills and to accept the currency of money. And you can also create structures that help support lower, more cost affordable resources. Uh, Again, I'm going out of order here, but I think this is an important example that I say often in my workshops. So if you've attended one of my Magic membership workshops, which I'll put the link below because I do have the replay and the full ebook and the course that you can learn how to build your own Magic membership. But one example I say often is journeying to a foreign country. And let's say you want to learn their language, you want to immerse yourself in the culture, and you can't wait for this vacation. But there's going to be 3 levels. You could either pay for a really affordable, cheap level. You buy some books and you learn the language on your own. It's a DIY level. You've got maybe 6 months. You've got plenty of time. You download Duolingo and you practice with yourself, right? Or let's say you have more of a time crunch and you also want to practice with a live person. So you pay the next level up, which is a group visit where you get to take a language class and you practice in a classroom setting with people you partner off. Again, still valuable. Awesome. Or let's say you don't have time for any of those things. You'll pay top dollar for a personal tour guide in this beautiful city. So you pay high price for this guide to take you to all the cool spots, the best dancing locations, the most delicious food that isn't in the tourist areas. Do you see how that doesn't feel so bad? Well, this is our patient's expectation. They're wanting us to take them on a journey towards health. And some of them might want to make the decision to pay the cheapest amount and do it on their own, and that's okay. Even if you have the wisdom to know that that may not get them very far, that's okay. Let them make that decision. That's their autonomy. And some of them might really just want your one-on-one assistance, and they'll pay for it. Accept that payment. That's a blessing. So if you're curious what other areas you might have higher risk of burnout, make sure you take that Catalyst Archetype quiz because it will give you that handout. It'll tell you exactly what parts of you, because we have all the parts, what parts of you might be at higher risk for that resentment and burnout piece. The links will be in the show notes. And remember, this is your one life, your one wild life. What are you going to do with it? How can you recreate the delivery of your medical care so that it fits the right size of how you want to show up in the world? Thank you for coloring outside the lines with me, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening to The Catalyst Way, where we clear the chaos and create space to flourish in medicine and life. If today's episode lit a spark in you, your next step is to go take the Catalyst Archetype quiz. It's fun, free, and freakishly accurate. Go to drlarasalyer.com/create. In less than 5 minutes, you'll uncover your burnout risk, your creative strengths, and work rhythms that energize you. Because it's not about finding a perfect plan, but rather flowing with the one that fits you. Go to drlarasalyer.com/create. And remember, teeny shifts create massive impact. So keep coloring outside those lines.